This is part 4 of Roger Klang's Actual Philosophy from my book Causation and the Universe: A Bridge Between the 1900s and the 2000s. I have other philosophical examples as well of how linguistics can mess it up when trying to convey it into logical theorems. The presentation of the criteria for how we could be considered to have knowledge of anything is constructed by Plato and problematized by the renowned philosopher E. Gettier. It has been considered an unsolvable problem for many years. The problem is related to Gödel's incompleteness theorem because of their linguistic nature. I consider myself to have solved the enigma of Gettier's problematization of Plato's theorem. An epistemological and rational conclusion from Plato's theorem and E. Gettier's example with the wolf. First example. A train is running on the railway tracks past a meadow. In the meadow there is a wolf. The passengers can see the wolf from the train. According to Plato, we require 3 criteria for enabling us to have knowledge of it. 1. It should be a conviction. 2. It must be consistent with reality. And 3. We must have rational reasons to accept it. All 3 criteria are met. Second example. Now, suppose that, as in E. Gettier's example, the wolf is actually a dog dressed up as a wolf. But a little further beyond the dog in the meadow, there is a real wolf. The 3 criteria are still met. And this is E. Gettier's problematization of Plato's theorem. For the wolf we see is not a wolf at all, and hence the theorem is faulty even if it is true, according to Gettier. Can we have knowledge that there is a wolf in the meadow, that the theorem is satisfied, by observing the dog and applying the 3 criteria? The answer is that we cannot. The theorem's correctness is completely independent of our observation of the dog. We do not know that the wolf is our costumed dog, or that there is a real wolf just behind the dog in the meadow. Or should we perhaps say that the theorem, on the contrary, is totally dependent on our observation? Because our observation results in our belief, 1, and our rational reasons to accept it, 3. But thereby follows that our observation leads to a faulty conclusion, for the visible wolf is false. The theorem is still true, but Plato's theorem requires an alteration applied to the unique situation. 1. It should be a conviction. 2. It must be consistent with the reality. An omniscient archangel must be the judge of whether the theorem is consistent with the real situation, or in other words, 3. 1 must have rational reasons to accept it. Thus, premise 3's rationality, as above, as mentioned, is not based on observations from our side. By changing premise 3 to one must have rational reasons to accept the belief, we move the decision for what is rational from the group to an omniscient archangel. One obvious objection you might come up with is that one can say that premise 3 is not needed then, because to claim premise 3 is the same as to claim premise 2, and that is, it must be consistent with reality. The ideal type theorem itself is not critical to getting an epistemological answer to an investigation of the rational conclusion of the theorem. The key is to know when a rational answer emanates from the premises, not when a premise is rational. A rational answer is comprehensive of the whole situation with the wolf and considers both the wolf and the dog as distinctive entities. Even in mathematics, the original premises 1, 2, and 3 have not led to a rational answer to Plato's theorem's inconsistencies in this unique situation from Getier's example with the wolf and the dog simultaneously located in the meadow, but where we only see the dog. Because that is what the whole point with Getier's fictional example is, that Plato's theorem is inconsistent. Here the archangel in my modified third premise, that equals the second premise, comes into the picture. Or should I say, it eliminates the third premise and leaves us with only premise 2 and premise 1. In one possible Gettier reality applied on Plato's original theorem, all of Plato's original premises are not fulfilled. Say that in one occasion there is a dog dressed up as a wolf in the meadow. Premises 1 and 3 are satisfied, while there is not a wolf behind the dog. Premise 2 is not satisfied. Then the conclusion we make about the so-called wolf is not a correct conclusion, because the wolf is actually a dressed-up dog. If we had been able to make a correct conclusion, it would not have been our belief that there is a wolf in the meadow. In our second example from above, or read second example in bold red letters above, forget about that. From Plato's original theorem, there is a real wolf standing behind the dog, and all three premises are met. Let me first say that a correct conclusion would be as seen from a correct supervision of an omniscient archangel's judgment about what constitutes a proper conclusion. On this occasion, we cannot make a correct conclusion based on our position on the train, that there is a wolf in the meadow, because we do not see it. We only see the dressed-up dog. We believe, however, that the conditions are in order, which they actually are, but not as we think, because we believe that the dog is the wolf in the meadow, and from it derives a conclusion that happens to be true, based on our false beliefs and Plato's original premise, from which I say that we have achieved an accidental conclusion, which we may call it. It also requires that the dressed up dog really looks like a wolf for us to be able to make a true, but not overall correct, conclusion. If there had been a water fountain or a dachshund dressed up in the front of the wolf, rather than a German Shepherd dog dressed up, we would never come to the conclusion that there is a wolf in the meadow by looking at the fountain or dachshund. The conclusion is true in this our other example, where all three original Platonic premises complied with the conclusion, but it is not a correct one. For this to be a correct conclusion requires that the premises implicitly take into account all the underlying facts. Read and compare with my deconstruction of suggested formulas posting as Gödel's incompleteness theorem. Again, the theorem itself is not of crucial importance. The key is to determine when the premises amount to a rational conclusion. And here is where the archangel and my modified premise comes to use. For here it is the archangel's insight that is the standard, and not my insight. And from that follows a rational answer to the theorem. The fact that the original theorem is true in this unique situation where we see the dog but not the wolf is a pure coincidence, read Blot on Plato's behalf, and not relevant to how we should set up the premises properly. To make a true conclusion based on faulty underlying facts, is something that has happened before in history. For example, there was an ancient Greek, Plato, who said that the earth was round long before anyone else had thought of it. And he founded this conclusion from that the shadow the earth cast on the moon could not be a likeness of the earth's shape if the earth was flat. He believed that the earth cast its shadow on the moon, when in fact the moon, usually, is shaded by itself and its position relative to the sun, as seen from our perspective. Considering this, Plato's original theorem appears quite absurd. And Getier's situation with the wolf in the context of Plato's theorem is revealing deeper thoughts about the nature of epistemology, how we humans are limited and how we can be wrong without realizing it. I don't know if Gettier was conscious about it, but that is what Getier's article implies. The theorem proves more than it can prove, just as the moon's shadow can do for those who have certain beliefs.